you said to go then, Bob, when we're ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
My only question is, what did I do with my Gatorade?
It's back here.
I worked up a thirst, walking back and forth.
I became dehydrated looking for my Gatorade.
Oh, over there, that's where it was. Thank you for telling me.
It was on the floor.
At least it reminds me I was saying, because I wondered, I think I had when I walked over your place. Thanks, Doug.
Just do your normal, you do 5, 3, 2, 1, and we'll.
Okay. All right, I'll do that here shortly. All right, we'll get on the road here. I'll actually give you a 10 down to 3 for good measure, Tom, if that's okay. You ready, Bob?
I am ready.
You ready again, Mike? Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Hello, I'm Steve Barg, City Administrator for the City of Marshfield, and welcome to the news conference covering the council meeting that was held this past Tuesday, February 9th. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Warren from WDLB Radio.
Okay, Steve, thank you. Thanks for having me and this opportunity. Going back to the meeting on February 9th, Mayor McManus, I'll start with you. You had, I guess it was maybe the agenda item that I focused on anyway. One of the stories I had coming out of this meeting was your request to authorize an investigation to be initiated by the city attorney into the protocol and actions of members of the Fire and Police Commission between January 1, 2020 and February 5th, 2021. Maybe just take us through the history, where did the agenda item originate from? Talk about your reasons for presenting that to the council or asking for that or requesting that. And then, what were some of the comments or discussion? What was the outcome? And I guess, where are we at with that item now as it stands following the meeting?
Well, I've got to be, I'll give you a brief outline of what it was. The prior week, I went into great detail with the Common Council regarding 4 major areas that I felt were a concern. And I went through there and I read, the information that I have. And as well as, and I think even more importantly than the information that I have was the city attorney's interpretation of it in his memorandum to me. And I thought that was very compelling for the council. And so then I thought, okay, well, now I'll ask them to look into this. And I think when people hear investigation, they hear, because it's quite popular today, they hear all of a sudden that it's going to get ugly. And I pointed out when we were in closed session, 4 areas that I felt were of concern, and let's look into that more. And I didn't want to get into an open session because of names of people and things like that. I didn't want to get into that. And so apparently the Common Council felt that was too vague. And so they would, I believe Adam Fisher made a reasonable point, which was give us something to look at and give us something to sink our teeth into so we know what it is. And that made a lot of sense. So they did vote. There was 2 people for it and 8 people against it. And that's where it ended.
Steve, any comments on that item or anything since the meeting in terms of that item, or does it just end there?
Well, I think it's probably up to the mayor more than anything, where he wants to take it next. I think what the council said last night, or on Tuesday night, I should say, is that they didn't want to direct the city attorney to start an investigation into the Fire and Police Commission members and their activities. But I think several members of the council, as I recall, opened the door to the fact that if the mayor came back with something in writing, akin to a formal complaint, a written complaint, obviously we're dealing with one of those right now in the case of the mayor, that if they would do that, that they might take a look at it and see what it rises to. So I don't think there was anything very clear coming out of that in terms of where this goes next. Like I said, I think it largely ties back to the mayor and where he wants to take it. But I think that door is at least cracked, that there may be an avenue to bring it back if he wishes to do so.
And Mayor, I'll just ask you then, so, Adam Fisher made his comments. Nick Paschal made similar comments. Ed Wagner called it a distraction. But there seemed to be some support there if you came back, in the form of a complaint. Is that something you're planning?
Well, right now, I'm more focused on, where it's going to be on the hearing that I'm going to have, where the council views me. So I would hold any response to that till after that has taken place.
Well, yeah, and I would just say one more thing too. Right now, it's obviously been a difficult time. We're going through a lot here, everything from the police chief on down. But I think as maybe not pretty as some of these things look publicly discussed, what's going on with the mayor, the concerns that have been raised through a complaint against him, the concerns that the mayor has raised about police and fire commission members and their activities. It's all part of the process. I mean, you've heard it said before that sometimes what goes on in the public sector isn't pretty. And it sometimes isn't, because it's played out in front of the citizenry, oftentimes in open session. But these are things that people are asserting their rights to look into, to challenge, and we're just trying to handle them the best way we possibly can.
Mayor, I will also point out that as part of the meeting on Tuesday, I'll go back to the public comment period of the meeting. You were not without your support at the meeting on Tuesday. I think it was 4 residents spoke in favor of you. And so that had to be, I guess that's one positive takeaway for you from the meeting. Any comments on that, what you heard from residents, what residents are thinking and saying out there?
What's been very interesting is the level of public support that I've received has been really quite overwhelming. There's the social media aspect of the world is a echo chamber. And what Steve, the city staff, and what I deal with on a daily basis is the reality. And I've taken a lot of comfort in the reality because for citizens to come, as you've been to a bunch of these council meetings, they're not that fun. And they're not, I would say probably 85 to 90% of the time there's total agreement. But, you don't necessarily hear about that, nor should you, because it's like kind of the way it is. But we don't get a lot of attendance in council meetings. So when people take the time to come out to do that, because I think it's very evident to many people in the public exactly what's taking place. And there's a large amount of people that are supporting the fact that of the things that I've been able to accomplish with the city, the respect I have for the city. I believe this is a wonderful city. I further believe that our city employees are incredible. And I stand up for the city employees, and I root for them. And sometimes they hear things from these walls that are not necessarily as complimentary. So the fact that the public came out to support me did feel good. And the fact that there are so many people that can see through exactly what's taking place. And I do believe that when it comes time for the hearing that they are going to have, I believe that everything is going to work out just fine. And then we will be able to put this chapter behind us because, what's happening in all of this, I guess what I would call drama is the city is still working great. Our first responders are doing great. They're giving out shots at the fire department. Our city streets department is doing great. you guys kind of messed up the weather report last week and you allowed a big weather system to come in here. So that falls squarely on your shoulders. Streets is doing great. You know, the other thing that happened at the other night at the council meeting was when Sam was here and going over, you know, his report, which was really incredible. You just had you had no idea how many parts per million mercury is in. And I watched Sam do the report. And I mean, if you want to see somebody that loves the difference between 1 million parts per million or 10 million or 1 billion, and that's who we have running that department, that's how we have so much pride, because when you take Sam, who did a brilliant job, that's indicative of the department that he runs. That's indicative of the 195 employees that we have here in the city that have that type of passion. That's something I think that we can all be proud of, and I will fight for them. So, which is exactly what I'm doing. And so to answer your question directly, it was very humbling for people to come out and speak on my behalf. Yes, it was, because in these types of things, that's not typically what you get. But I do know that, you know, when it comes to the fact, I will say this as well. You know, when the council was presented with the complaint and they voted unanimous, they did not vote unanimous to convict. They voted unanimous to have a hearing, which they should. If I would have been in the room, which I recused myself, because obviously I can't run a meeting and then do that, that would be wrong. I would have voted for it, of course, because otherwise you're sending the wrong message to the public. You're sending a message of, we make a complaint and then it gets brushed under the rug. That's not what transparency is about. However, at my hearing, I believe it will be very transparent, and I think when all the real information comes out, I think it's going to be fine. However, I will say this, I will respect whatever decision that the council members make. There are some council members that they all think differently and whatnot. Some of us agree, some of us don't agree on certain things. But at the end of the day, which Alana Fedek was here the other night in applying for the ethics board, it's not easy being up here in these chairs, because not all the decisions you make is everybody gonna like. It's like the Super Bowl. The refs, for 50% of the people in the nation, were brilliant. The other side thinks that the game is rigged, and you know, all these different things. That's the way it is in public life. You're never gonna have, the decisions you make and the things that you do are never going to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you do it to the best that you can. So I'll stop rambling, but just say, yes, it was very humbling that so many people were here.
I'd just like to make two comments. First of all, playing off something that Bob said about Sam Warp and wastewater. You know, they don't get the accolades that some other departments have. You know, the police department will make some incredible arrests. They'll make big drug busts. The fire department has some great rescues. The street department does an amazing job with, you know, large snowstorms, blizzards, in terms of clearing the roads and getting them drivable again. You don't really see the wastewater operation, you know, a whole lot, and we don't talk about it maybe too much. But, you know, not just his analysis of mercury, but his work on phosphorus has been just nothing short of amazing in terms of the issues that our plant has faced. And really, both Sam and you know, Mark Kivala, his assistant, and the other members of that department, they all really deserve great kudos, because they run such an outstanding operation in terms of technically, financially, and everything that they do. So it was great to hear the mayor make some positive comments on behalf of them, because like I said, they're not seen, they're not as visible as other employees are sometimes. And I want to go back to one comment about the people who came to the podium. I appreciate the concerns and the frustration that they expressed on some things, but I just want to remind everybody listening to me right now that not only the Fire and Police Commission, but also the council and the mayor have tried as hard as they can to encourage and promote the idea that we get this issue with Chief Grahams moved along as expeditiously as possible. They just don't control it. it's really being handled in ways that are legal and appropriate and meeting all the statutes and making sure everybody's rights are respected. So, in the case of the Fire and Police Commission and the mayor and council, I think it'd be unfair to say that they haven't been trying to get this to some resolution. It's largely been out of their hands, but now we're going to have a hearing sometime soon, and then, hopefully we'll get some decision on where we go here.
Yeah, and Mayor, talking about, a complaint against you from a commissioner and so on and so forth. The Police and Fire Commission did meet the day after the council meeting. I think they are now moving forward on, the complaint issue, that's one issue now, but there's this other issue with Chief Gramza in terms of the city charges basically against him. And it sounds like they voted to move that process along on Wednesday. It wasn't a council meeting thing, it was the next day, but what can you tell us about that? It sounds like that issue is going to move forward here coming up in March.
Yes, it was, and keeping in line with, as Steve said, statute, I believe 6213, they have, once the complaint is given, and it was given, then you have 30 days to schedule a hearing. And so that 30-day period was coming up, and so the attorneys met, Hap Wolfgram and also our employment law attorney and the attorney representing Rick was on the phone with the Police and Fire Commission, and they were going over dates of, okay, when can we get this done? The commission wanted it sooner. I believe their attorney wanted to kick it out a little bit, and then they started to say, okay, well, we can do it, I believe, in March. Mm-hmm. And then they started to have to look to calendars. So part of it was the other attorney felt that, okay, we're going to need 40 hours of testimony. So how do you do that? Well, do you do 40 hours in 1 week, 8 hours a day or whatnot? And then, of course, then there's the reality of certainly the attorneys or people are going to have things to do. Maybe they have already things planned for that day or whatever. So then they started dissecting, okay, what days can we meet? And they ended up coming with a schedule that worked for all of them. And so that will be taking place in March. And I believe that they've allotted 5 days with an understanding that if they need more at the end of 5 days, they would talk about it at that time. And that is where it stands right now. In hearings and things like that, there's, things can change. So as it stands right now, that is my understanding from watching the meeting when I saw it on Wednesday. But I want to preface this with saying is, I don't know if there's been any other conversation between yesterday and today to where that's different. So that was just my take on watching the meeting.
Yeah, that is where it sits right now, basically. And I know, Mike, that when people hear your report on WDLB and they hear other media saying that it's going to start on the 10th of March and it's going to be, kind of hit and miss with some days on and off to the latter part of March, up to the 25th or whatever it is, they're going to say, really? I mean, does it take this long to, this is in Congress. But again, it's all about making sure that both sides have a right and the opportunity to present witnesses, to cross-examine the other side's witnesses. There's a lot there. And that's part of why it's taken as long as it has. I know people are frustrated that, Rick stepped aside voluntarily in August, and here we are having this conversation in February. But, when this hearing occurs, there's going to be a lot of different issues out there. And Rick's attorney is going to want to contest the things that the city's attorney is presenting and vice versa. So we just ask people to bear with us. I am glad, as the mayor is, that the hearing dates are finally set. That's a good thing to be able to tell the citizens that there's activity and movement, and we look forward to getting to that point.
Well, and Mayor, another issue from Tuesday night too, the same night the council denies your request to investigate the city's Police and Fire Commission, there was a step forward in the creation of an ethics board. Maybe just talk about that, what happened Tuesday night there, and I guess now that makes it official. There's an ethics board in place now with the election of, I think, 4 members to that board on Tuesday night.
Board members, yeah, it was, this is something that Alderman Wagner in District 5 was working on for some time, and he brought it to the council, first reading and a second reading that was approved. And there was a lot of discussion around it. And, but it was approved, and then it was to where people that wanted to apply for this, and this was put out all over, could send in an email and whatever information they want. So what we wanted was basically a cover letter and a resume so we could see, you know, what all was there. And I believe that there were 9 folks, which we were thrilled about, to get that many people looking for 3 spots and an alternate. So I guess 4 spots. And there were some great packages of information. I believe that the 3 primary selections is 1 retired judge, and the other 2 are, I believe, practicing attorneys, which comes as a great advantage to this board, as they're already going to know the legalese and everything else. And then Jenny Jishro, who was the alternate, was somebody that helped Ed and the folks putting this together, that put together this, and she's got a very impressive background as well. So this is going to be very well. And the use is going to be, it's going to be nice for myself and aldermen if there's a potential conflict of interest, and we're not really sure about it. We'll be able to call them up and say, hey, is this a conflict of interest? Should I recuse myself, or am I okay? So before we would inadvertently make a mistake, it would be there.
Yeah, that last part is really a big point. I mean, a lot of people hear about an ethics board and they think that all they're going to do is hear cases where somebody may have committed some sort of ethical violation. And we're hoping that the lion's share of what these folks hear are things just like what Bob mentioned a minute ago, which is people looking for guidance. You know, let's say, one of our council members is, they know a contract's going to come up, and we get to May or June, and their brother-in-law works for that company, and, they used to be involved in the company, but now they're not, or whatever. People want to know. I get calls like that. I refer them oftentimes to the city attorney. People want to know if they're stepping into bad waters. So I'm hoping that the lion's share of what this group does is hears and gives guidance to people who are proactively trying to see if they might be stepping into bad ethical waters. But they'll also hear cases when it's believed that there may be an ethical violation. If they find in that review that there might have been something criminal, they'll certainly send that to the DA's office for review. But, assuming that that's not likely, for the most part, they'll be referring something to the council if they believe that, in fact, an ethical violation may have occurred, and then the council can determine what type of action they might want to take. So it's a very important board. I agree with the mayor that it's wonderful that we got such great number of candidates. Oh my gosh, 9 candidates to be on this board. That's pretty excellent. And the quality of the people that we have on board now as the members and the alternate is very good. So I think we're off to a good start. The next thing that's going to happen is we need to get some things in place. Jennifer Rakew, our Human Resources Director, will be at the heart of it. We'll be planning some orientation and training for these individuals before they have their first meeting. Sounds like they have good backgrounds, but still they need to know what their responsibilities are and get up to speed on what's expected of them. So you'll be seeing that or hearing that come around in the next couple of weeks or so. And then we'll get these people, settled for their first meeting, whenever that might be.
Okay. There were a couple of closed session items. If either of you want to comment, update on development agreement with Veterans Parkway Estates and claims for unlawful tax. Anything there?
There really isn't anything we can say. I will tell you that, neither one of these are things that are unheard of in terms of the broad type of conversations. We have a development agreement where you look at it and say, okay, well, is it working the way we want to? Do we need to tweak it to make it more, effective and to be able to get, building going that we'd like to see? So there's some things come up with that. And then this is not the first time in my 10 years that we've had this, but someone, you pay the tax, you're required to pay the tax that you're assessed, but then you can come back and claim a refund if you think it was done in error. If you believe that your valuation was wrong or that you shouldn't be subject to property tax at all, those types of reviews. So I can't really comment more, but those are the types of issues you get into when you go into closed session under those line items.
And Mayor, we just mentioned, I don't know if there's any restriction news regarding this or not, but coming up on Tuesday, it is an election day. They call it the spring primary election. I don't know if spring is really appropriate, but it is a primary election nonetheless. Anything we should know? I know there's not really a lot, for people to vote on here locally. There's a statewide race for school superintendent, but I guess polls are open nonetheless, right?
Polls will be open there, but there's really nothing locally. And so, but it'll be another election that Deb Hall will, put together, and the polls will be open. And even that, is I could go on and on about all the different departments and how proud I am of them and the little recognition that they get. But if you look at last year with the clerk and her office with 5 elections in a pandemic, and it was handled brilliantly. And this is where I go back to, I'm aware that we have things going on here in Marshfield, and they all need to be looked into, and I have no issues with that being looked into. I just don't ever want to lose sight of the fact of what an incredible city Marshfield is. And right now, it's kind of popular to be doing all the things, unfortunately, that are taking place here. But realistically, if you look, the citizens of Marshfield can be very, very proud of their local city hall and how it's run under Steve's leadership. All the different departments, I brought up earlier Sam Warp and, his presentation on Mercury, and I really had no idea what he was talking about, but I was getting more excited about him getting excited about the Mercury. And he was so proud on getting the levels down, and that exemplifies all of our different departments. If you look at Dan Kneck and how he handles his department, I mean, if you really want to go and you really want to see some enthusiasm, go downstairs and see Tom Turchi and Mr. Cassidy and Ing in our IT. It is a wonderful city, and I will tell you, brilliant people working here for the city to make it run as good as it does. So although we have our issues, we're awfully proud of the city of Marshfield under Steve's leadership and the city employees that really take great care of their citizens. It's exemplary, and we're very proud of them.
I'm going to add a couple more pats on the back. Thank you, Mayor. But as far as the clerk's office, when they have the election this coming week and then the one in early April, that will be 6 elections during COVID alone. Now, admittedly, the turnout for the one on February 16th is going to be lighter. Some people, I applaud the people who are following closely the DPI race. A lot of us don't. But going through the mechanics of the election is the same, regardless of whether or not it's going to be the presidential, where you're overflowing with voters, or it's a smaller one. So Deb Hall, city clerk, first-rate job. Jessica, the deputy clerk, is just an outstanding employee, does a wonderful job. And I agree with what Bob is saying about other departments. I've been a city administrator for about 26 years now in 3 cities. And I can't ever think back to a group of department and division heads who are better at what they do and more teamwork oriented. I've been in cities where, to be honest with you, there's been some turf battles between, maybe the police chief and the public works director didn't get along and, all these kind of things. We don't really have that here. We have people who are just literally trying to do the best they can and work with one another. So I'll stop at this point. I don't want it to become just a total love fest about staff, but it really, truly, in my 26 years, this is as good as I've ever seen it.
All right. Anything else?
Not that I can think of. We appreciate everyone's patience with some of the things that have gone on here. The limited access to facilities. Bob has given some outstanding COVID-19 updates along the way, and we really appreciate his leadership in that. We're all hopeful that the declining number of cases in the state will continue, and the vaccine becoming more available and being taken by more people, that we will begin to pull out of restrictions and limitations to our buildings and facilities. And we want to do that. We want to do it responsibly, but we're all hopeful that as we get into the spring of 2021 and beyond, we're going to start getting back to some version of normal.
All right. Well, thank you both for being available today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. And that concludes this news conference covering the events of the council meeting on Tuesday, February 9th. Thank you.